There's so many trees, but we know they're all trees or they're all chairs. And he said, there must be some chair somewhere, which is like the ultimate chair, the chair of all chairs, that gives all other chairs their chairness. And he actually felt this was like a real place and a real thing, and he developed a whole pseudo-religion around it, because it's so fundamental to how we work. We're basically born on a biological mission to build mental models. We go out, and we're born, and we need input. You see them, if you've seen the movie Short Circuit in the 80s, some of you are too young for that, which freaks me out. So there's this robot, and he's all about input. And we're basically the same way. So I take the example of the baby here. I love babies, especially around the 2 to 3 mark, when they can kind of talk, but kind of not. And there's a few ways you can guarantee a complete mental breakdown. Deny them sleep, deny them food, some sort of physical discomfort, or try to play a board game in front of them. Try to do an activity that they recognize that you're participating in, that they're not allowed to. Complete tantrum. Because that need to participate and develop a model of what everyone else is doing is as fundamental to them at that age as eating and sleeping. There's an experiment which tried to isolate this building aspect, this familiarity and this pattern building aspect that was done in Harvard University. They took strings of characters like this, with enough variety that no one in the room is going to understand all of them. And they showed them on the cover of the Harvard University Press, student newspaper, every day for several months. And at the end of several months, they tested the students and they asked them, does this string of characters mean a good thing or a bad thing? That's it. And there was a statistically significant correlation between how many times they had seen it and whether they saw it as a good thing. So basically, they'd seen it more times, that's a good thing. It was strange, that's a bad thing. These are Harvard graduate students. This is how hardwired we are. Building or changing models costs biological energy. It costs our brain to change. So therefore, familiar simply equals better at a very fundamental level, a frighteningly fundamental level. And this carries itself through all of our experiences and the way that we behave with the world. There's Daniel H. Pink does a book called Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, and he's talking about the idea of flow. So this is a very modern idea, a very complex behavior. And the idea of flow, you've all experienced this, is when you're sitting down, doing your job, you're preparing a presentation, you're writing some content, you're out at the gym, you're playing a sport, you're playing a musical instrument, and you just hit a zone where everything's just coming, it's just all automatic, everything's perfect. And he says that people in that space, they lose sense of time and even themselves. And the most important thing in flow is that the challenge wasn't too easy, nor was it too difficult. It was a notch or two beyond the current abilities, which stretched the body and mind in a way that made the effort itself the most delicious reward. So when we have models, and we use those models, we get a pleasure reward. We actually enjoy using our established models. And with just enough foot on the gas to keep us interested, we actually hit an almost meditative state of pleasure. Which brings us to semantic structured content, because what could give you more pleasure? So when I do my workshops on semantic content, we use this example a lot. And I've been using this for 4 years, and I found no reason to change it. First, I double-check that nobody speaks Vietnamese. And even if you can, you probably can't read it from this distance, so I'm probably okay. And we go through this, and I can take any group of people, 4 or 5, and I ask them, what is that stuff? What's the one up there, the big one in black? What's the red one? What are these down here? What are these ones with the bullets on them? And we give them names. And I know that in any group of people anywhere in the world, and I've done this on several continents, and probably, I don't know how many times now, and they can always predict my slide. Always, always. Maybe we'll miss one out. And the reason we can do that is we're taking formatting, we're taking visual design, and we're interpreting semantic models from that. We understand what big and darker and at the top means. We understand what bullets mean and the relationship between these images and the text below. Because we've just been out in the world and we've seen enough things, which we may not call them product overviews, but we've understood them to be product overviews, and we've even built a semantic model of what a product overview should have and how a product overview page should be laid out. So we've got the product overview, it's got a product name, model number, tagline. If people don't know the word tagline, they give me marketing slogan or marketing bullshit, something that usually gives the tagline word away, et cetera, et cetera. And we can even, I like this one, we get into key features and feature and the image. We can even interpret that because one of them is big, unlike, even though we know that these are all the images, we can know that one of them is a special image. So we can interpret there's a second bit of semantics on there that's classifying it as the main image. Maybe we can click other ones, but there was one that had to be the main at the beginning. If you have a semantic model, you're basically interpreting a lot of complexity from your reality, a lot of variation, a lot of mess in our real world, and you're boiling that down to that core skeleton. You agree that skeleton, and then you say, okay, now we're always going to do it across this common skeleton. No more variation, no more making it up as you go along. What's good about that is that your creators and your customers will internalize your models. So I use the example of a journalist. A journalist has 20 minutes, the length of this talk, to write an entire article. And they sit down and they go, because they have internalized the model of a news story. Headline, byline, location, most important facts, following facts in descending order of importance so that the editor can cut it off wherever. There's no pause. It's just natural. That's because they have that model built into them. If you have any piece of content that you work on that you know is consistently structured, reports, certain presentations, anything you work with on a regular basis, you will be able to churn that out in a way that you can't when someone says, we're thinking about writing a blog post. Do us up a blog post, will you? That's the difference between having the benefit of a model behind something and having a totally open remit. What's also important is your customers will internalize it. So we've just spent the whole first half of the presentation talking about how familiar, consistent, structured is perceived at a very fundamental level as simply better. We will just enjoy this content more if it is consistently structured. We will perceive it to be more authoritative, we will trust it more, and also they will be able to flow through your content because they will know where to look, they will know how things are labeled, they'll know where to look for the information they want. So semantic structured models are how we naturally perceive the world. Consistency in the structure and variety in the content. So even though you've got this backbone that you've got to adhere to, you've got the content itself, the words to play with, to give people enough interest to keep them engaged. But you want that skeleton keeping them, giving them something to hold on to that allows them to consume at the speed and the way that they want. If you don't, and this is an example, I've got to give credit to my co-author and good friend Rahel Ann Bailey. This is from a BlackBerry pair of pages, and we've got the Bold 9700 on one side and the Tour 9630 on the other. So maybe I'm deciding between these two devices in a pre-sales environment, or maybe I'm a corporate buyer and I've got to buy 1,000 of them for my team, and I'm trying to decide whether I should buy these or continue buying the old ones that my team is using now. And I come on here, and every single line is somehow different. So the BlackBerry Messenger, email, and text is not talked about over here. You've got to go down here to see that this one also does text messaging. This one adds the idea of 3G, which isn't mentioned here, although they both do 3G. This one has got the TELUS international roaming, which is actually referring to the TELUS SIM card, which means that it has international roaming, which you don't know if you just look at the one on the left. And the total train wreck is the BlackBerry app world. So here we've got access to thousands of apps from the BlackBerry app world. Here it just says BlackBerry app world. You've got to know whatever that means. And then it's available both as a feature and a service, but differently depending on where you see it. and on and on and on. So if I'm trying to ingest this content, first of all, I'm having trouble deciding what the right decision is. I want to try to buy, I can't make a decision because you're not helping me. And if I have any options, I'm going to go for one that's going to be greasing the wheels for me a little bit more. Make it easier for me. Give me something to work with that's consistent so I can understand it and digest it. So that's why human beings want it. Why organizations want it is because once you've got one of these fancy semantic content models, that becomes the centerpiece for multi-channel and omni-channel. You've got your content type that you defined, and you say that for the product family pages on the desktop web, that's where the product name goes. When you go to the actual product landing page, that's where they go. The product name goes over there in JSON format for the native app, and we put it out to there for the product manual and print. And so on and so forth, for the model number, for the tagline. Taglines don't go on the product family page, so we don't make a line there. So when your semantics are explicit in your content, when you've actually gone through this exercise of distilling all the chaos down and setting an internal standard of how we do things around here, then machines can help you reuse, transform, translate, and format your content. They can do that because you've taught them a human understanding of the content. They get it now. They understand that a feature in a feature list is different than a list item in an ordinary list. So that when you're trying to manage your features, you can find them, you can manage them, you can update them, you can govern them, you can reformat them. So when somebody comes out with something called Microsoft HoloLens, you can just say that's where taglines go on HoloLens. So semantic structured content isn't driven by technology, it's driven by our biology. I give the film example. Why is film 30 frames a second? Not because that's how film needs to work, but because that's how our eyes work. We always build technology based on our bodies, based on how we perceive things. Every year we build computers and content-related technology to be more brain-friendly and more brain-like. We're going into augmented reality, so just how we look at the world and we say, okay, that's my car, I know that person, what's over there, I remember there's something around the corner. We're going to look at the world and have the extended memory of machines who can recognize images and give us extra information. Google's using the same technology, and they said if you can recognize a car or recognize a cat, maybe you can draw one. And then they feed it data, and they say, what do you see? So a computer can now look up into the clouds, just like we can, and see animals and shapes that it invents with its artificial intelligence. You've got to go on this blog. It's mind-blowing. So this is Google feeding their neural network that they've based on the brain images and asking the computer what it sees. And it draws in creatively through association from its neural network. This is random data, completely random image. And we get this. So it took us thousands of years to get there, but we taught a computer how to think like we do, and it gave us post-impressionist art in 4 seconds. So the computers are getting closer and closer to the way we think. So my message here is, fear not structure and semantics. It's not about technology, it's about us. It's about thinking about people and getting the computer to meet us halfway. Don't dismiss visual design, which is very common in this market. Design is not an afterthought. That's something we don't have to worry about because we're all about content. Think about design, test on design, talk to designers. Make sure your design is optimizing because design is based on semantics as well. And the first mental model to change is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nas.